Welcome. I am Annette Reeder from the biblicalnutritionist.com. And today it's all about omegas. Have you ever been told you should take an omega supplement? Have you wondered, should I take an omega supplement? Well, today we're going to talk about it. And a great news to you, I have Dr. Sean Talbot back with me again. You've heard him before. You've heard him explain how simple this can be, how we can improve our health, and it's always going to come back to the gut and the brain. Today, it's all about omegas, omega-3 supplements. What should we look for? Why do we need it? And just how we can improve our health by taking this. So I just want to thank Dr. Sean for joining us. But before we get started, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, the bell. You know how to do it. I don't need to keep telling you that I enjoy reading your comments as well. So Dr. Sean, thank you once again for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always pleasure to join you in that.
Well, that is great. And so, okay, omega-3s. If I were to go into Walmart, which why would anyone shop Walmart for vitamins? But if I did, you just look at the shelf of omega-3s and you just grab one because they have the best label on the front. First of all, tell us why we should need an omega, and then we're going to go into how to pick a good one.
Yeah, so omegas are omega-3 fatty acids, right? That's the technical way that we describe them. Most people just call them omegas. It's, besides a multivitamin, omegas are the next thing that I recommend virtually across the board. Everybody needs to supplement with one for a couple of reasons. You're absolutely not getting enough omega-3s in your diet, even if you eat fish and even if you eat fatty fish, mackerel and sardines and bluefish and tuna and the salmon, those sorts of things. You're not getting enough omega-3s. And when I say you're not getting enough omega-3s, omega-3s are good for your brain, they're good for your heart, they're good for your overall level of inflammation, they're good for blood sugar control, they are good for absolutely every aspect of human metabolism. And so if we're not getting enough, we're not doing our bodies and brains and everything else any favors. So everybody needs to sort of close that gap between what we need and what we're actually getting in our diets. But then the question becomes, all right, how do I choose one? Because you're exactly right. When you go to the shelf and you see all these different omegas, it's overwhelming, all the different choices. And some of them are a little bit different than other ones, but people just think that they're all the same. And they're not all the same. There are huge differences from one product to the next. And that's where it makes it really important to understand a little bit about how to decipher what those labels are and what you're actually looking for when you're looking for an omega.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing a lot of is teaching about the different percentages, like which omegas are more important to have the higher percentage of, and why would that be? So Give us some insight into those percentages.
Yeah, when we're talking about omega-3 fatty acids or omegas, there are two major ones that we want to supplement with. One is called EPA and one is called DHA. And so you can broadly kind of break them down into two categories where DHA is really important for brain development, for building the actual tissues of the brain. EPA is more associated with an anti-inflammatory effect. So they're both important. You want both. You don't want to get just EPA or just DHA. You actually want to get a combination of them. But different products will differ a little bit in terms of which one of those they're emphasizing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes you're trying to make more of a brain product versus more of an inflammation product. Sometimes it's governed by where are you getting the fish oil from? Where are you getting those omega-3s from? They usually come from fish oil. And what kind of fish are you getting and where are you getting the fish from? It could be it could be to try to hit a price point. Some of the cheaper products that are on the market don't want to give you very much of either of those. So you'll see products that have a very low level of omega-3s. And so there's a potency issue, there's a purity issue, and there's a ratio issue. And so that's a lot for people to take in. But those are some of the things that go into making that right decision.
Okay, so I really want to stay balanced in both areas. And so many people,
yes.
Well, I want to say almost everyone that contacts me has inflammation, yet inflammation of the brain you're also needing the DHAs.
That's right.
So how are they to choose? And does every label have to tell you the percentages? I mean, I've seen on the back of the labels, it will give the numbers and, the units. So how would someone choose the best product for them?
Yeah, so the first place to look would be the overall potency of the product. That means, how many milligrams of fish oil are we getting anyway? A product might give you a gram of fish oil, so a gram is 1,000 milligrams. It might give you 1,500 milligrams, 1.5 grams. That's around the level that most people want to supplement with as a total amount of fish oil. Right? The American Heart Association tells us between 1 and 2 grams a day is what we need for overall heart health. Some of the later research, more recent research, is suggesting it might be 2 to 4 grams, but let's just say we want to get around 2 grams a day. So if you can get that 2 grams in as few capsules as possible, that's what you want. Because if you go look at some of these low potency fish oils that you might find at the big box stores and the warehouse stores and things like that, you might have to take a handful of capsules and sometimes a handful of really large capsules in order to get up to that 2 gram target. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is, what is the percentage there? So sometimes you'll see, especially with those cheap products, every gram of fish oil is only about 30% these omega-3s. It's only 30% of the EPA and DHA that you're looking for. Those are what I call low potency, cheaper kinds of generic oils. The more premium ones, the more pure ones are more like 50% or 60% or 70%. In fact, when I formulate an omega product, I don't go any lower than 70%. So that of that 1,000 milligrams of fish oil, 700 milligrams of it is EPA and DHA. So there's that goes from the total amount to the purity of it, I guess, if you will. And then the question becomes, okay, of that 70% that's omega-3s, how much is EPA, anti-inflammatory, and how much is DHA, brain building? You want both of them, but some of the really, really most recent research is suggesting that a 5-to-1 ratio is really what we want to shoot for. 5 parts of EPA to 1 part of DHA, because then what that does is it lowers inflammation systemically. And importantly, just like you said in that, it lowers neuroinflammation, inflammation in the brain. So you lower that neuroinflammation and that with the EPA, and then you have that small amount, that 1 part of DHA that can help with the repair process. And so the most recent research shows that 5-to-1 ratio helps with cognition, so we can focus better. It helps with inflammation in the brain so that we feel better. That's sort of an anti-depression effect. There's an anti-anxiety effect. You just feel better when you're supplementing with the right ratios of these essential fatty acids.
Okay. You must have been reading my notes, because I had just written down, make sure I ask you about anxiety and depression. So, because that is the other main comment. And that's the comment that people are hesitant to make. Hey, I'm dealing with anxiety there. I'm dealing with depression. It's becoming more open to share about that, but it still has a stigma to it in some areas. So for you to bring that up, that was my next question. How does taking a really good omega product help us to decrease anxiety and depression? So teach us one more time about how that works.
Yeah, well, a lot of the low grade sort of subclinical depression and anxiety that people struggle with all the time. And, when I say subclinical, you just don't feel right. You feel a little bit tense. You feel a little bit anxious. You feel a little bit moody and brain foggy and those sorts of things. Not so much of an issue where you necessarily have to be on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or one of those focus, ADHD drugs or something like that. But those subclinical symptoms that people have all the time and just think, oh, this is just my modern life. That's an omega-3 deficiency. It's because we're not eating 5 servings of fatty fish every week. So we're not getting that omega-3 level. That's affecting how our brains work. And so if we can bring people up to that optimal omega-3 intake with just a little bit of a supplement, an extra 1 or 2 grams a day, that means that they're happier, they're less tense, they're able to focus, their overall memory is better. The brain just works better because it's less inflamed. It's less staticky in a sense. people love the way that they feel. So it's really just, it's not like we're treating a disease. We're just closing the gap with this really, really important nutrient that everybody needs and hardly anybody is getting. And so we close that gap with a supplement, and people feel amazing.
Yeah, my husband, if I say, would you like some fish tonight? He says, no, I'll just take a pill. So he would rather take the omega
Exactly.
supplement versus eating fish. So he still gets fish at least once
Right.
a week. It's just a requirement, but I'd rather just swallow a pill than eat fish, so. So anyway, that's the only supplement that I'll let him get away with that. So anyway, okay. The top 5 reasons why someone would be interested in adding omegas into their diet. Just quickly, if you were to list off the top 5, you've already listed off some: anxiety, depression, inflammation. What would be two more reasons why someone should add omega supplements into their plan every day?
Yeah, the 2 would be things that, the 2 that I'm going to tell you might sound completely out of left field, but skin health, so a beauty benefit, and weight loss, a metabolism benefit. If we're and they both sort of track back to inflammation. But if you're overinflamed, that's going to be bad for your brain, but it's going to be bad for every single tissue in the body. It's going to lead to something called glycation, which means that the collagen in your skin gets brittle and gets non-elastic. And so that means you're going to have more redness, you're going to have more blemishes, you're going to have more issues around absolutely, all the skin problems, like more wrinkles, more redness, more problems with wound healing, all that kind of stuff. In a similar manner, if you're overinflamed, that's going to interfere with blood sugar control. It might set off a stress response in the body, and those are going to lead to a metabolism where you're going to be hungrier, you're going to be craving sweets, you're going to be storing fat around your midsection. So there's a huge benefit of omegas for beauty and for weight loss benefits. And those are things that, I wouldn't say to somebody, you could take an omega and you're going to be more beautiful the next morning, or you're going to take an omega and you're going to magically lose weight. But it just puts your body biochemically in a place where your skin takes care of itself, your metabolism takes care of itself, your thyroid works better, the entire body is more efficient in everything that it's trying to do.
Okay. I haven't had my omegas today. I need to pause this video and go take them, and I'll be right back. Like, wait a minute. We could have done the video on just those 2 subjects, because that's what everyone's looking for. So I appreciate you bringing those 2 up, and you're right. They do apply to those 2 areas in more ways than we would even imagine. So people who have dry skin, scaly skin, omegas is one of the ingredients that you're missing. And you're so right on that. So once again, I just really want to thank you for giving us your time today and to share with us about taking omega-3 supplements. I'll put a link down below to the supplements that Dr. Sean recommends and what I take, because I like following my doctor's orders and suggestions. And I really appreciate this, Dr. Sean. You have given us great information in a way that everyone can handle it and can understand it. And that's always very beneficial. And you just really helped us to improve who we are and how we can live stronger going forward. So any other further comments about omegas?
No, just that, like, this is one of the things, like I said at the very beginning, everybody needs it. There isn't a single person that I've ever worked with that doesn't have some amount of an omega-3 gap, and supplements are a really easy way to fill that gap.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you joining us today. So for all of you watching, you picked a good video to land on, and I appreciate that. If you want to get notified every time we post new videos, which is 3 to 4 times a week, be sure and hit the bell down below after you've subscribed. And don't keep this information to yourself. I know you have family members and friends who need to understand why they need to take an omega-3 supplement, why this matters, because just ask yourself, how many people do you know that would like to have more beautiful skin, maybe even have an edge in losing weight, less inflammation, less partly cloudy days is how I describe that subclinical, depression is, and just feel better about who they are. So be sure and share this video with them. Dr. Sean, again, thank you. And for all of you watching, thank you again for joining us here at the Biblical Nutritionist. And check out our website. We have an academy, biblicalnutritionacademy.com, where we have courses where you can go and study God's recipe for excellent health.